He walked into that restaurant expecting nothing more than a quiet meal after the hardest years of his life. An empty chair sat across from him. Then a trembling voice broke the silence. "My son is hungry. Can we stay a while?" What happened next froze the entire room. Stares turned sharp. Judgment filled the air. And in one split second, this single dad had to decide whether to protect his comfort or risk everything for two strangers. He thought he was just sharing dinner. He had no idea he was about to change dozens of lives, including his own. Stay with me, because the moment that follows will challenge the way you see kindness, pride, and what it truly means to never eat alone again. Before we dive into this incredible story, take a quick moment to subscribe to the channel and tap the bell icon so you never miss a single powerful, life-changing story we share. I remember that night with painful clarity. The restaurant smelled of warm bread and roasted garlic. Soft jazz drifted through the air like a quiet confession. Outside, rain pressed against the windows in slow silver lines. I sat alone at a corner table, my jacket still damp from the storm. My hands ached from 12 hours at the construction site. My back throbbed with every breath. Across from me, an empty chair waited. It had been empty for 3 years, since the accident, since the hospital hallway. Since I walked out without my wife and promised my little girl I would be both mother and father. That evening, my daughter Emma was staying at my sister's house. I had told myself I deserved one quiet meal, 1 hour without responsibility, 1 moment without pretending to be strong. The waiter placed a plate of steak in front of me. Steam rose gently into my face. For the first time that day, I felt human. I lifted my fork. Then I heard a soft voice beside me. "Sir, my son is hungry. Can we stay a while?" The words were careful. Almost apologetic, I looked up. A woman stood there, soaked from the rain. Her coat was thin. Her shoes were worn. Beside her stood a small boy no older than 6. His eyes were large, not begging. Just tired, the manager noticed them at the same time. His jaw tightened. "This is a private establishment," he said sharply. The room grew quiet. Forks paused midair. A couple at the next table stared as if poverty were contagious. My chest tightened. I felt heat rising into my face. Embarrassment, discomfort, anger. The boy swayed slightly. His small hand gripped his mother's fingers. I saw Emma in his eyes. The manager stepped forward. "You cannot stay here." The woman nodded quickly. "I understand. He just needs to get warm." Her voice trembled, but her spine remained straight. Dignity wrapped around her like armor. I looked at my plate, at the rich food, at the empty chair across from me. And something inside me broke open. "Please," I heard myself say. "They are with me." The manager frowned. "They are not your family." "They are now," I answered. A silence fell heavier than the rain outside. Every eye in the room rested on us. I felt exposed, judged, but also strangely calm. The woman hesitated. "I do not want to cause trouble." "You are not trouble," I said softly. The boy's gaze shifted to the steak. I pushed my plate toward him. His hands shook as he reached for a piece of bread. He ate slowly at first, then faster, as if afraid the food might vanish. The mother tried to stop him. "Eat," I told her gently. I ordered another meal, and another. The manager watched with tight lips but said nothing. Rain thundered harder against the glass. Inside, warmth began to return to the room. Conversations resumed in low murmurs. A woman at the far table signaled the waiter and added soup to our bill. A man near the bar paid for dessert. Kindness moved quietly from table to table, like a current beneath still water. The little boy smiled for the first time. It was a small smile, but it carried light. When he finished eating, he looked at me and said, "Thank you, sir." No performance, no drama, just gratitude. His mother wiped her eyes. "I used to be a nurse," she said quietly. "I lost my job when the hospital closed. I have been searching for months." Her voice carried exhaustion, but also resolve. I reached into my wallet, then stopped. Money felt temporary, insufficient. Instead, I took out my phone. "My company is finishing a housing project next month," I said. "We need an on-site medical assistant. It is steady work." Her eyes widened. "You would do that for us?" I thought of Emma, of hospital corridors, of strangers who brought meals when I felt too broken to cook. "Yes," I said. The shock on her face shifted into something deeper. Hope. The storm outside began to ease. The windows no longer shook. The restaurant felt warmer, fuller. The empty chair across from me no longer felt empty. It felt shared. When they stood to leave, the boy hugged me without warning. His arms wrapped tightly around my waist. In that small embrace, I felt something mend inside my chest. Something I had carried alone for too long. I had come there to eat alone, to escape the weight of being everything for my daughter. Instead, I was reminded that strength is never meant to be solitary. We survive by holding one another, by recognizing hunger beyond the stomach, by answering quiet voices before they fade. Weeks later, she started working at our site clinic. She worked with quiet excellence, with patience, with gratitude that filled every hallway she walked through. Her son and Emma became friends. They shared crayons, shared laughter, shared stories of storms that no longer frightened them. One evening, months after that rainy night, we all sat together at the same restaurant. The same table, the same corner, but this time the chairs were full. The room felt different. Or perhaps I was different. I realized that night had not been about charity, it had been about recognition. Pain recognizes pain, and kindness answers it. Life will test your strength in silent rooms. It will place empty chairs across from you. It will allow storms to press against your windows. But if you open your table to someone shivering in the rain, you may discover that you were the one who needed saving. And as I watched our children laugh over melted ice cream, I understood a simple truth that guides me even now. When you think you are alone at the table, look up. Someone nearby is waiting for courage to speak. Be the voice that says stay, be the hands that share bread. Because in lifting another soul from the cold, you warm your own in ways no solitary meal ever can. Emma leaned her head against my arm as the children argued about which dessert was best. The restaurant lights glowed softer than I remembered. Outside, the pavement still shimmered from a recent drizzle. I watched the boy, Daniel, carefully fold his napkin when he finished eating. Careful, precise, as if order gave him safety. His mother, Laura, caught my eye. There was strength in her posture now, not the fragile kind that survives by hiding. The steady kind built through fire. "I never told you what happened after the hospital closed," she said quietly. The laughter of the children faded into the background of my mind. I focused on her voice. "They delayed our final paychecks for months," she said. "I had savings, but rent does not wait for grief." Her fingers traced the rim of her glass. "I sold my car first. Then my wedding ring." Her voice remained calm, but I felt the weight beneath it. I knew that weight, the kind that presses on your lungs at night, the kind that makes pride feel like a luxury. Emma tugged at Daniel's sleeve. "Come see the fish tank," she said. They ran toward the lobby. Their laughter echoed bright and fearless. Laura watched them with eyes that carried both memory and warning. "I used to sit in my car after interviews," she said. "I would rehearse how to tell Daniel we needed to move again." The word move hung heavy between us. I remembered the boxes after my wife passed, the way grief filled every room like smoke. "I was afraid of that night," she admitted. "The night we walked in here." The clink of silverware from another table cut through the air. I remembered the tension, the stares, the manager's voice. "I almost turned around," she said, "but he was shivering," her eyes shone, "and I promised myself that hunger would never win over my fear." The memory tightened my chest again. Not with discomfort this time, with respect. Across the room I saw the manager, the same man. He recognized us. His expression shifted from uncertainty to something softer. He approached slowly. "I owe you an apology," he said to Laura. His tone carried none of the sharpness from that stormy night. "I judged too quickly." Laura met his gaze. "You were protecting your business," she replied evenly. "Yes," he said, "but I forgot to protect my humanity." The words settled over the table like a gentle reckoning. He cleared his throat. "Your meals tonight are covered." Laura began to protest. He raised his hand gently. "Please allow me to correct myself." He walked away before she could respond. I felt a quiet ripple in my chest. Change had happened here, not loud, not dramatic, but real. Daniel returned holding Emma's hand. "There are tiny orange fish," he announced proudly. His cheeks were flushed with warmth. With belonging, I studied his face, no trace of the boy who swayed from hunger. Children recover quickly when the world shows mercy. Adults take longer. Laura looked at me. "You changed more than one night," she said softly. I shook my head. "That night changed me too." I meant it. Before that evening, I carried my grief like a private burden. I believed strength meant silence, provision, endurance, but inviting them to my table had exposed something else. Strength multiplies when shared. Pain loses its sharpest edge when spoken aloud. The children returned to their seats, arguing over who would sit next to whom. Emma insisted Daniel sit between us. "You are part of the team," she declared. Team, such a simple word. Yet it held more power than pride ever could. As we prepared to leave, Laura hesitated near the door. "I have been thinking," she said carefully. "There are families still waiting outside places like this." The night air brushed cool against my face as we stepped onto the sidewalk, streetlights reflected in shallow puddles. "What if we create something?" she continued. "Not charity, opportunity." Her eyes carried the same spark I saw when she treated injured workers at the site clinic, focused, purposeful. "We could partner with restaurants," she said. "Offer vouchers through clinics and schools, quiet help, no humiliation." The idea settled into me like a seed finding soil, practical, dignified. Sustainable. Emma squeezed my hand. "Can we help too?" she asked. Daniel nodded eagerly. Children do not analyze generosity, they simply join it. I looked at Laura. At the restaurant windows glowing behind us, at the memory of rain and tension and a trembling voice asking to stay. "Yes," I said slowly. "We can build something, not just buildings of brick and steel, but tables that stretch longer than we planned, doors that open before someone must ask twice." Laura smiled. Not the fragile smile of survival, the confident smile of a woman stepping back into her calling. Cars passed in steady streams beside us. Life moved forward as it always does. Yet something felt different in the air, not dramatic, not loud, but alive. Daniel slipped his small hand into mine without warning, warm, trusting. I realized then that the shock of that first night had been necessary. Discomfort is often the doorway. Embarrassment can be the teacher if we allow it. Emma looked up at me. "Daddy," she said, "are we going to see them tomorrow?" I smiled down at her. "Yes," I answered, "and the day after that," because this story was no longer about a single meal. It was becoming something larger, something that would test us again, push us again, ask us to choose compassion again and again. And as we walked together beneath the streetlights, I sensed that the hardest part was not behind us. It was ahead. Building hope requires more than one brave evening. It requires endurance, sacrifice, and the courage to keep a chair open even when the table feels full. The next morning arrived with pale sunlight spilling across my kitchen table. Blueprints lay scattered beside Emma's cereal bowl. Numbers, estimates, deadlines. But my mind was not on steel beams or concrete pours. It was on empty stomachs, on quiet dignity. On the way, Daniel had folded that napkin as if it mattered. Laura met me at the construction site before sunrise. The air smelled of wet earth and diesel fuel. Workers moved like shadows against the rising light. She carried a clipboard pressed tightly to her chest. "I made calls," she said. 3 schools, 1 church. A small grocery store. Her voice carried momentum, not desperation, momentum. "We can start small," I nodded. "Small foundations hold the strongest buildings." By noon, we stood inside the unfinished community hall attached to our latest housing project. Dust floated in golden shafts of light. The space echoed when we spoke. I imagined folding tables, warm meals, quiet conversations, a place where no one felt watched. "We can use this space on weekends," I said. Laura ran her hand along the bare wall. Her eyes reflected possibility. That evening, we returned to the same restaurant. Not as guests, as partners. The manager listened carefully. His expression was thoughtful. "You want prepaid meal credits," he said slowly. "Distributed discreetly." "Yes," Laura answered. "No announcements, no special seating, just normal service." He studied us, then he exhaled. "I misjudged once," he said. "I will not repeat that mistake." He extended his hand. Agreement, respect, shared responsibility. Within 2 weeks, the first vouchers were placed quietly into school backpacks, folded between homework sheets and permission slips. No spotlight, no speeches. The first Saturday we opened the community hall, my hands trembled more than they ever had before a major contract signing. What if no one came? What if too many came? What if we failed them? Laura arranged medical supplies on a long table near the back wall. Emma and Daniel taped simple paper signs that read "Welcome." The door remained closed. The room felt too quiet. My pulse echoed in my ears, then a soft knock, 3 gentle taps. I opened the door. A father stood there with two daughters. Their coats were thin, their smiles cautious. "Is this the place?" he asked. His voice carried the same mixture of pride and vulnerability I remembered from myself years ago. "Yes," I said, "it is." He stepped inside slowly. Then another family arrived, then another. Shoes shuffled across the concrete floor. Children's whispers filled the air. Within an hour, the hall buzzed with quiet life, not chaos, not desperation. Life, Laura moved from table to table, checking blood pressure, offering gentle advice. Emma poured lemonade with serious concentration. Daniel carried baskets of bread with both hands. I stood near the doorway, watching. The shock I felt that rainy night returned. But it was different now. It was awe. A simple decision at a corner table had multiplied into something living. Something breathing. Midway through the afternoon, I noticed a woman standing near the entrance. She did not step inside. Her posture was rigid, arms crossed tightly, eyes scanning the room, judging. Protecting herself from disappointment, I recognized that stance. I had worn it myself. I walked toward her slowly. "You are welcome here," I said gently. "I do not need charity," she replied quickly. Her chin lifted. "I understand," I answered. "This is not charity, it is community." She hesitated. A little boy peeked from behind her coat. His fingers clutched the fabric tightly. The room behind me echoed with laughter, with the clatter of plates, with warmth. I stepped aside, leaving space, not pushing, not persuading, just leaving space. After a long moment, she crossed the threshold. The shift was almost invisible, but it felt monumental. As the afternoon light faded into evening, folding chairs scraped softly against the floor. Families left carrying leftovers wrapped in foil. Children waved goodbye as if leaving a birthday party. The hall slowly emptied. Exhaustion settled into my bones, deep, honest. Laura leaned against the wall beside me. "We fed 38 people," she said quietly. Her voice trembled with contained emotion. 38, I repeated, not numbers, stories, not statistics. Faces, Emma tugged my sleeve. "Daddy, can we make it bigger next time?" Her eyes sparkled with expectation. I looked around the now quiet hall, at the crumbs on tables. At the warmth still lingering in the air. Bigger. The word carried both promise and pressure. Growth demands structure, funding, consistency. I felt the familiar weight of responsibility pressing against my ribs, but beneath it something steadier pulsed. Purpose. "Yes," I said slowly, "we can make it bigger." Laura met my gaze. We both understood what that meant. More planning, more sacrifice, more moments of doubt. As we locked the doors and stepped into the cool night air, I realized the story had shifted again. It was no longer about reacting to hunger. It was about anticipating it, about building systems that outlast emotion. Daniel slipped his hand into mine once more. "Are we helping tomorrow too?" he asked. His question held innocence, but also expectation. "Yes," I said, "tomorrow and the next day, because kindness is not a single dramatic gesture. It is a discipline, a repeated choice. And as I looked at the quiet streets stretching before us, I sensed new challenges waiting beyond the next corner. Funding gaps, skeptical voices, fatigue. Moments when the table might feel too crowded again, yet I also sensed something stronger growing beneath all of it. A network of hands ready to hold one another steady. A widening circle of chairs. And somewhere in the distance, another soft voice preparing to ask, "Can we stay a while?" Winter arrived quietly that year. Cold winds swept through the streets. But inside the community hall, warmth lived in every corner. What began as one shared meal had grown into a steady rhythm of service. Local businesses donated supplies. Teachers volunteered on weekends. Teenagers who once came for food now came to help serve it. The circle kept widening. One evening, nearly a year after that rainy night at the restaurant, we hosted our largest gathering yet. Strings of simple white lights hung across the ceiling beams. Long tables stretched from wall to wall. Laughter echoed against walls that had once stood bare and silent. Emma stood on a chair giving directions like a tiny manager. Daniel passed out plates with confident ease. Laura moved through the crowd with calm authority, checking on an elderly man's blood pressure, reassuring a young mother who looked overwhelmed. I stepped back and took it all in. The scent of soup and fresh bread filled the air. Steam fogged the windows. Outside, snow began to fall in slow, steady flakes. Inside, no one was cold. The restaurant manager walked in carrying trays of food, smiling openly now. The father who had been our first guest was helping stack chairs. The guarded woman who once hesitated at the door now coordinated volunteers with firm kindness. This was no longer my project. It was ours. Laura joined me near the doorway. "Do you remember how quiet it was that first day?" she asked. I nodded. "I remember the fear," I said, "and the doubt," she smiled. "Fear is loud in the beginning. Purpose is louder in the end." Across the room, Daniel and Emma were laughing so hard they could barely stand. Their joy was effortless, unburdened, protected. And in that moment, I understood something that had taken me years to learn. Strength is not measured by how much weight you carry alone. It is measured by how much weight you are willing to share. I once believed I was sitting at that restaurant table by myself, grief on one side, responsibility on the other, but the truth was simpler. There are always people standing just outside the light, waiting for someone to make space. The shock of that rainy night had been a gift. Discomfort had forced me to look up, to see beyond my own exhaustion, to recognize that pain is universal, but so is compassion. When we open a chair at our table, we do more than feed someone. We restore dignity. We build connection. We remind one another that hard seasons do not last forever. Snow continued to fall outside as the evening came to a close. Families bundled into coats. Children waved goodbye. The hall slowly quieted. I turned off the lights one by one. Before locking the door, I looked back at the empty tables. They no longer felt lonely. They felt ready for the next family. The next story, the next quiet knock. As Emma slipped her hand into mine and we stepped into the cold night air, she looked up at me and said, "Daddy, I am glad you were not alone that night." I smiled. So am I, because the moral is simple and true. When life tempts you to guard your table, make it longer instead. When someone whispers that they are hungry, listen. Kindness shared in one small moment can echo for years, and the love you offer to a stranger may become the very thing that saves you too. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it touched your heart, share it with someone who may need a reminder of hope. Leave a comment below and tell us what part stayed with you. And do not forget to let someone in your life know these powerful words. You are never alone. Sometimes a simple message can become someone's strength for another day.